how do we humans try to make sense of this world? It can be pretty bewildering sometimes. What tools do we use when we're facing those huge questions like who are we or what's the point?
Yeah, the big stuff.
Exactly. And the researcher we're looking at today, Durlav Raimaji, he has this really powerful idea. He talks about myths. He calls them living narratives, even the most powerful tools we have for tackling those questions, finding meaning, setting moral boundaries.
And he suggests they often come from this inner turmoil, right? Trying to grasp creation itself.
Precisely. It's more than just old stories.
Definitely moves beyond the simple fairy tale idea.
It really does. And that's what we're diving into today. We're heading, metaphorically speaking, to Western Nepal. We're focusing on an ethnographic study of a really fascinating place, the Chhatra Maharaj Kot Durbar Temple.
Right. And our goal here is to unpack how these ancient stories aren't just sitting there passively. They're active. They create power structures. They uphold them.
And they bridge these huge universal ideas with very specific local life. And maybe most surprisingly, how they can actually sort of silently protect the environment.
Yeah, exploring how these narratives are still shaping lives, shaping the land itself right now.
So for this exploration, we're relying heavily on that ethnographic study. It's called Myriads of Myths, Creating and Sustaining the Structure of Power, an ethnographic study of Chhatra Maharaj Kot Durbar Temple from Western Nepal.
And it's packed with detail. The researchers' field notes, the theories they use, their key findings. It gives us a really solid ground-level view of how these myths function in a real community.
Okay, so let's try and picture it. Let's step into the Kot Temple itself. What's the setting like?
Okay, so imagine you're quite high up, around 1,600 meters above sea level. It's near this small village, Chhatraganj.
Wow, 1,600 meters.
Yeah, and from there you can actually look down, quite a way down, to farmland that's maybe at 900 meters.
Quite a vantage point.
Definitely. And the temple complex itself, it feels distinct. There's a brick wall around it, two main gates. It feels set apart.
And not just physically set apart, right? The study talks about this fascinating mix of time periods. There's the history you can prove, and then this much, much deeper mythic time.
That's a key point. We have solid evidence the temple's been there for at least 200 years.
Mm-hmm.
Things like a wooden carving dated 1715 AD,
Okay.
a bell from 1766 AD. There are mentions of historical figures like Colonel Gambhir Bahadur Singh Rayamaji from 1857, and even a document about a Guthi that's like a community trust from 1848.
So concrete dates, historical markers.
Right, verifiable history. But then you talk to the local believers, and for them, the significance of this site goes way, way back.
Beyond just a couple of centuries.
Oh, absolutely. They might say 5,000 years, maybe even older. The head priest actually shared this specific story from his grandfather.
Oh, yeah.
He said, there used to be a small shrine below a panyu tree, it's a type of local tree, before they built the temple as it is now. And he pointed to this old, you can still see today.
Yeah, there.
It's still there. And he said well, that's the only remaining evidence of an ancient palace mentioned in the Skanda Purana, one of the major Hindu scriptures. He believed it was 5,000 years old, possibly more.
Wow. So that really shows how the myth and the actual landscape are just woven together.
Perfectly put. It sustains the belief.
So for the researcher tackling this kind of complexity, what were the driving questions? What was the core mission here?
Well, they had three main interconnected questions guiding the whole thing. Pretty broad scope.
Okay, what was the first?
First,
Yeah.
what roles do different kinds of myths play in actually constructing, legitimizing, and then keeping religious power going? How do these stories do the work of power?
Right, the mechanics of it.
Okay.
And the second?
Second question was about bridging. How do these myths connect the huge universal ideas from Hindu cosmology, the big picture stuff, with very specific local identities? You know, the ritual roles people have, the caste hierarchies that exist right there in that community.
So connecting the macrocosmic story to the micro local reality.
Exactly. And then the third one, which, like you said, feels a bit counterintuitive at first.
Yeah.
How did these myths manage to preserve the religious structure and act as ecological custodians?
Custodian, like guardians.
Yeah, guardians of the environment.
Mm.
How do they protect forests, springs, sacred bits of land through things like ritual taboos, symbolic no-go zones, maybe even the feeling that a deity is watching?
That is a fascinating angle. So a really comprehensive set of questions.
Definitely. And to answer them, the researcher knew they couldn't just, collect the stories and call it a day.
Right, it's deeper than that.
Yeah. Understanding myths, the study really emphasizes this, means looking at their underlying structure, their deeper meanings, and how they function as tools of power. You need the right theoretical toolkit.
So, not just what the story says, but how it works and what it achieves. What kind of theoretical lenses did they use?
They integrated a few key frameworks. So there's the structural approach, drawing from Levi Strauss. He saw myths as a kind of symbolic language, often built around binary oppositions, life, death, good, evil, culture, nature, that sort of thing. The idea is this reveals a kind of grammar of the human mind, how we fundamentally structure our world.
Like underlying patterns in how cultures think. How did that fit here?
Well, for instance, looking at the Barbarica myth through this lens helps show how themes of sacrifice and divine purpose create this moral framework, balancing power and duty in the community. It provides a kind of fundamental order.
Okay, I see. What other lenses?
Then there's the interpretive angle. Think Clifford Geertz, who talked about how meaning is stored in symbols and how rituals are like cultural texts we can read.
So the rituals themselves tell a story.
Exactly. And Victor Turner built on that, emphasizing the performance aspect, how meaning comes alive through embodied and ceremonial action. It's not just abstract symbols, it's what people do.
The physical act of the ritual. Got it.
hmm And finally, the power dimension. This brings in thinkers like Foucault, who saw rituals as techniques of power, linking small, everyday practices to big structures of control.
Okay.
And Malinowski, who famously called myth a charter of social organization, it basically justifies claims like who owns land or who has certain rights.
It legitimizes things.
Precisely. And then Bourdieu's idea of
Mhm.
symbolic power, power that comes from recognition, prestige, belief, is crucial for understanding how these myths about ancestors establish and make the ritual hierarchy seem natural.
That's quite a toolkit,
Mhm.
bringing together structure, meaning, performance, power.
It really is.
Sure.
And the researchers' big takeaway was that you really need to integrate these. You can't just focus on structure because the world isn't always neat and binary, and local interpretations matter hugely.
Right.
But you also can't ignore the structures because people do connect local stuff to bigger universal ideas. And crucially, myths aren't fixed. They emerge, reorganize, and reform. They're alive.
Living narratives, like they said at the start. Okay, so let's get into the actual myths they found at Cot Temple. The research grouped them into four main types, right?
That's right. Four types, each doing slightly different work. First up, origin myths.
Okay, origin myths, what do they do?
These are the ones that connect the temple's specific deity, Chatra Maharaj, to the really big stories, the major Hindu texts like the Mahabharata. They basically give the local god cosmic credentials.
And there's a key story here about someone named Barbarica.
Yes, that's central. The myth tells of King Kaitabya, also known as Barbarica. He ruled from Uluk, which is the site of the temple now.
Okay.
During the Great Kurukshetra War, Barbarica had these incredible divine powers, symbolized by three arrows. He wanted to help the Pandavas, who seemed weaker.
So he was going to intervene.
He wanted to. But Lord Krishna, knowing this would upset the balance of the war, came disguised as a Brahmin to test him. He challenged Barbarica to pierce every single leaf on a nearby peepal tree with one arrow.
And could he?
He did it instantly, proving his immense power.
Hmm.
So then Krishna revealed himself and asked for Barbarica's head as a boon, a sacred offering.
His head. Wow.
Yeah. The idea was this sacrifice was necessary for the greater cosmic good. And Barbarica, understanding this, agreed, but he had one wish to witness the entire war.
So Krishna granted that.
Yes. He placed Barbarica's living severed head on top of a tall bamboo pole on a bar tree, giving him a perfect vantage point to see everything eternally. This story elevates Chatra Maharaj, linking him directly to this pivotal moment in Hindu cosmology.
That is an incredible, vivid myth. So that connects the local to the cosmic. What about the next type, oral histories or oral myths? These sound more grounded.
They are. These stories deal more with the actual founding of the temple, how the god physically settled in that specific location. They bridge the gap between the cosmic event and the place itself.
And this involves Barbarica's head again after the war.
Exactly. The story goes that the Pandavas carried his severed head back towards his kingdom. They traveled through the mountains and stopped overnight at a place now called Balkot, about 13 kilometers away.
Okay.
And the bamboo pole carrying the head. Miraculously, it sprouted roots there overnight.
No way.
Yeah. Then they continued to a local stream, got a cola, bathed, collected sacred Belpatra leaves, and finally they reached this cave right below where the Kot temple now stands. The locals welcomed the head with music and celebration, and was placed on a throne there.
So these stories literally map the god's arrival onto the local landscape.
Precisely. They provide that crucial link between the deity and the specific place.
Okay, so we have cosmic origins and we have the local arrival story. What about the people living there? How do myths shape their roles? That brings us to ancestral myths.
Yes, and these are absolutely critical for understanding the social structure. These myths assign specific, sacred duties and responsibilities to particular families, particular lineages. And in doing so, they reinforce and protect the existing caste hierarchy and the whole ritual economy of the temple.
Can you give an example? Like the chief priest.
Sure. The Brahmin chief priest's family lineage, the Bandaris, their ancestral myth says their forefathers, originally called Batrai, served in the royal kitchens of Badur for King Kaitabia himself.
Ah, so Bandari comes from Badur.
Exactly. And because of that service, a later king, King Shri I, formally granted their lineage the sacred duty of performing the main worship, the Devata Pujane, not just for the temple god, but for the whole village. That locks in their high ritual status.
Okay, so history and myth intertwine to fix their role. And you mentioned a powerful story about Dalit families too, the ones who make the garments.
Yes, a really striking one. This involves the Dalit ancestors from the Sunam and Awaf Gotra, specific clan groups. The myth says when Chhatra Maharaj first arrived, they were the ones who stepped forward to sew the sacred ritual garments, the Gaja, for him and his brothers.
So a foundational act.
Absolutely. And when Chhatra Maharaj offered them a boon, anything they wanted in return, they humbly said they didn't need anything.
Mm.
But he insisted. And when he learned their Gotra, their lineage, he made this declaration. From this day forward, only your lineage shall have the sacred duty of sewing these ritual garments. No one outside your bloodline may ever undertake this task.
Wow. That's not just assigning a duty, that's a divine command protecting their role.
Exactly. It makes their role sacred, essential, and exclusive to their lineage, despite their lower caste status in the broader social hierarchy. It's powerful.
It really is. Okay, that covers origins, arrival, and ancestral roles. What about the fourth type? Supernatural or contemporary myths? These sound more current.
They are. These are often more recent stories, sometimes firsthand accounts about miracles, divine interventions, or even punishments. They serve to reinforce the temple's power and rules right now.
Like cautionary tales, almost.
Sometimes, yeah. There's one story about a 69-year-old Chemphi priest, Bir Bahadur KC. He admitted to sipping some alcohol, just a little, but within the temple walls, which is strictly forbidden.
Uh,
Yeah. And shortly after, he described feeling possessed by Chhatra Maharaj himself. He said he started running uncontrollably fast down steep mountain paths without injury. People who saw him were apparently amazed.
ran down mountain paths uncontrollably.
That's what he reported. A few days later, during a community gathering, a shaman publicly accused him of drinking in the sacred space. And that's when Bir Bahadur realized the uncontrollable running. That was a divine warning.
Ah, the penny dropped.
Right. And the shaman relayed a message, supposedly from the god. If he ever did it again, he could be killed.
Whoa, that's a serious enforcement mechanism. Direct, personal, and pretty terrifying.
Definitely reinforces the rules. And there was another contemporary example linked to the Dalit lineage that sews the garments.
The Gajazurs.
Yes. The Dalit priest telling the story remembered an incident from his childhood. His uncle had some sort of conflict with the local king at the time, and the king, probably out of spite, ordered a different Dalit lineage, the Ranapyali Damai, to sew the Gaja that year,
Trying to replace them.
trying to usurp their divinely ordained role. But the story goes, when the members of this other lineage started the required fasting the day before the ceremony, they were suddenly overcome with fear. They started trembling, seized by panic.
Really? Physically affected?
Apparently so. And the conclusion everyone drew was immediate and clear. Chhatra does not accept them for this task. The divine will stepped in to maintain the original lineage's duty.
So the god himself intervened to protect the ancestral assignment.
That's how the story functions, yes. It acts as a real-time confirmation of that sacred duty.
It's fascinating. These stories aren't just background noise. They are actively shaping who holds power, who does what, right up to the present day.
That's absolutely the core insight from the study. It emphasizes that the rituals, the processions, the ceremonies at the temple, they aren't just symbolic window dressing. They visibly, repeatedly enact power.
Perform power, as you said earlier.
Exactly. These myths, especially the ancestral ones, draw boundaries, as the researcher puts it. They define who belongs, who leads, who follows, who performs which sacred task. And it's not static power, it's dynamic. It's constantly being performed, recognized, and re-legitimized through these sacred actions tied to the myths.
Okay, that connection between myth and power is clear. Now let's shift to that really intriguing third question myths as ecological custodians. How on earth do stories end up protecting forests and springs?
Yeah, this is a really profound part of the research. It shows how the myths extend beyond the temple walls and imbue the whole surrounding landscape with meaning. Specific forests, springs, rocks, even hills become sacred
And
domains.
why? Because the god was there.
Often, yes, because a mythical being walked there, or bathed there, or because a specific ritual happens there, or maybe materials for a ritual come from there. So protecting these places isn't about following some government environmental law.
It's about something else entirely.
It's driven by symbolic authority.
Yeah.
People protect these places out of fear of desecration, maybe fear of divine retribution, or simply as a way of remembering and honoring their sacred history and identity. It becomes a form of respect.
Like a kind of silent conservation, as the study calls it.
Exactly. It's conservation driven by belief, not bureaucracy.
Can you give some specific examples from the Kot Temple area?
Sure. The research notes specific trees that aren't cut down because, according to myth or tradition, their flowers were used by the god in the past. So that tree is sacred now.
Okay.
Certain springs are worshipped and kept clean because there's a story that the god bathed there or washed his clothes there, so you don't pollute that water source.
Right, sacred water.
Even animal sacrifice, which might sound counterintuitive from a purely conservationist view.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Well, it's highly regulated by ritual here. It's not random killing. It happens at specific times, specific places, often linked to stories about the god needing to appease another deity, like a goddess who granted him divine weapons. So the practice is contained and given meaning within the mythological framework.
So even that is managed through the lens of myth and ritual.
Yes. And the overall effect is what the researcher calls a symbolic ecology. It's a way of relating to the environment that resists the purely modern, often extractive logic of just seeing nature as resources to be used.
Instead, it sacralizes care, as the study puts it.
Beautifully said. It makes caring for the place a sacred duty. And the researcher argues this is incredibly relevant today in the Anthropocene, with climate change and ecological crisis all around us.
It really is fascinating how these old beliefs can foster such a powerful, organic form of environmental stewardship.
Mm.
No park rangers needed, in a way.
In many ways, no. The belief system does the work. It's a powerful demonstration of how culture itself can drive sustainable practices.
So, as we bring this deep dive towards a close, it's abundantly clear that myths at the Kot Temple are anything but passive stories. They really are living structures.
Absolutely. They're doing so much work. They sustain the hierarchies, the ritual roles. They embed these huge cosmic ideas right into the local reality, giving life meaning. They enact power through every ritual, every story about an ancestor.
And remarkably, they protect the local ecology through reverence and taboo and this sense of divine oversight.
Right. The entire sacred landscape becomes this incredible living archive where memory, myth, meaning, power, they're all tangled up with taking care of the place.
It paints a picture of a really integrated, holistic worldview. But, and this is a big but, the study also touches on the fragility of all this.
That's the crucial tension now.
Modernity brings challenges. Migration means people leave, taking knowledge with them. Younger generations might not connect us strongly. Ancestral knowledge gets lost.
And there are external pressures too. The study mentions the tension between this local, relational, ritual-based environmentalism we've been talking about and what's sometimes called global environmentalism, which can be more science-driven, sometimes even aligning with resource extraction logics.
A different way of seeing the world, essentially.
Completely. And then there are challenges from things like animal rights discourse, which might conflict with practices like ritual sacrifice, however symbolically important they are locally.
So it leads to this really difficult question, a paradox almost. Are places like Kot Temple just protected heritage, something to be preserved like a museum piece? Or are they sometimes viewed by outsiders, or even by some locals, as underutilized land?
Yeah, that's the tightrope they walk.
Can this kind of sacred heritage, these rituals, this way of life, can it actually survive modernity without just becoming quaint, fossilized?
Or is there a way for them to evolve, to adapt, to continue protecting both the people and the place in ways that are meaningful for the future?
It's a huge question, and it leaves us thinking, what really stands out to you listening to this about how these ancient, powerful stories continue to resonate and shape our world, maybe in ways we don't always recognize?